All right, you're listening to Geek Vice. Geek Vice, the podcast that 4 out of 5 voices in your head prefer, and nobody listens to the fifth voice.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Geek Vice, episode 137, proving any vice with enough geek can become a virtue. My name's Morph, that man's Kip. Good evening, Kip.
Good evening.
So we have had a bit of change of plans from our original topics today, and I think last week we talked about that we were going to talk about some books. We had some comic books we were going to review. We had a book by Ezekiel Boone that Kip had read. Boone. There's 2 O's in that, not one.
Reading hard, as you say.
Reading is hard. And that we were going to talk about today, but with the backlash that was Suicide Squad and the terrible reviews that were there, and the fact that Kip went and saw it twice this weekend, not just once, and the fact that there's such a dichotomy between the critics, which on Rotten Tomatoes give it a 26%, and the audience, which is giving it a 72%, we have got to talk about this movie. But we're going to make you guys wait, because we got a couple other things we want to talk about too. So we were just going to get right into it, and I didn't start the timer, so I'm going to do that real quick. But what I did get over, I guess, what did I get? When did I get it? Friday? I posted it up on our Facebook page that I received my copy of Oregon Trail board game.
Yay!
It is the Oregon Trail card game, and this is the travel guide because this is the directions on how to play. And if you hate, this is also kind of cool. If you hate reading the directions, it gives you a website to go to watch how to play the game. So that's the first time I've seen that in directions. But the game is super simple. It is a nice, simple card game. The directions are in a little pamphlet even. And really, the setup is a quarter of this, and the directions is one side of the page, and that's really it. It's that simple to play.
Well, the question everybody's going to want to know is, can you die of dysentery in the game?
Yes. And cholera, and the measles, and extreme cold. And actually, there is one thing that I have to read directly out of the instructions here. So it tells you how to play, and then it says ending the game. The game ends when at least one player reaches the Willamette Valley by completing the 10th set of 5 cards, reaching the finish card. If this happens, everyone wins. More likely, the game ends when the last player dies. So right there, it tells you this game is just as hard to win now in the card game form as it is in the computer game form. So it's a really simple game where you get trail cards. For those of you not watching the video, you don't get to see all the pretty pictures. So if you're listening to this podcast-wise, go to our Google, go to our YouTube page. Here, I'll get it right eventually. It's like I've been drinking tonight, and I haven't. So maybe that's the
Maybe you should.
I should. So if you go to our YouTube page, you can watch this video, and you can actually see all the cool little pictures. So you get trail cards. You're dealt out trail cards, and you start with 5 trail cards. You start playing trail cards in a sense of, let me grab a couple of them here. Make sure these go together. Nope, these don't go together. Hold on, I gotta find 2 that go together. Here, this works. So you get trail cards like this one, and you play them together like this. So they match up, and your trails continue. So really kind of cool, very simple concept, and you set 5 of them in a row. Once you've reached 5 in a row, then you stack them up. Each trail card has something a little different on it. So they have things like this that says roll an even number to ford the river, roll a 1 and die by drowning. In that case, you're dead and out of the game. Once you die, you're done. You don't come back. So you can have up to 6 players in this game, but once you die, you're done. Makes sense. You can also try to ford the river, and if you roll an odd number, you can lose a supply card. Supply cards are important because they help you avoid and deal with calamity cards, which come up by pressing spacebar to continue. Draw a calamity card now. I love the fact that they included the press spacebar to continue thing on there. You also, in your trail cards, you can run into forts that allow you to draw supply cards, or you can run into, let's see, here's one. You can run into towns. Towns allow you to collect a supply card or remove a calamity card from play. That is extremely important because it saved us a couple times in this. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way. I should have brought a whole nother table down for these. So here's your calamity cards. They say calamity on them. Can't screw this up. But you get things like dead oxen. And the dead oxen say 2 oxen have died. Play 1 oxen card to continue. 1 round of play without an oxen card, and everyone in your party dies. This killed us once when we played this game yesterday. But that's where if you had a town card, you could play that town card and remove this calamity card from play without having the oxen. So that's always fun. You can get cholera. And I love the fact that it's just a skull is the picture. Cholera. And cholera can be removed if you have 2 medicine cards. But if 2 cholera cards enter, says 2 medicine cards can cure you. If any player draws another cholera card before you're cured, you have died of cholera. You can get measles. Measles are only needs 1. You lose a turn unless a trailmate can play a medicine card, and if another measles card is drawn before you're cured, you die from measles. So pretty much any of the calamity cards are going to kill you at some point or have the possibility of killing you, except for a few minor things like you can go hunting for food. And if you have a bullet supply card, you can get food rations. Or a thief can steal your supply cards. And of course, everyone's favorite, there's your card. Dysentery. You have died. No saving yourself from dysentery. You get dysentery, you're dead. So the supply cards are really simple. There's things like spare parts or medicine or food. 200 pounds of food, to be exact. I love that it calls.
I noticed on the hunting card, it said 200 pounds of rabbit. That's one hell of a hunting trip.
Exactly. Well, and that's what it's the food card is. It just says 200 pounds of food. So you get food, that's why it says 200 pounds of rabbit. And here's your bullets. You have to have bullets. And depending on how many people you have in your trail party, because this is a cooperative game, you are trying to reach somebody in your group is trying to reach the end. And in the directions, it even tells you sometimes it's better to let somebody die than to waste supplies on them. So they try really hard in this game to implement this idea of the Oregon Trail, of the video game, and of the real life experience of trying to get this long distance in a time when you have no modern conveniences and that stuff's really bad. So this game is a lot of fun. You have one of the parts for your witty players that they will enjoy is that you put your names onto this basically trail list. So you put your names of all your players, up to 6 players, and then when they die, you get to fill out their tombstone.
Nice.
With the directions actually say, it's kind of funny. They give you the examples for it, and one of them is you get to put in the epitaph, a short little epitaph, and the one they give you is Prudence. She never saw the measles coming, but they spotted her. Now,
well, the thing is you could have a lot of fun with that because I looked up cholera and I looked up dysentery.
mm-hmm.
They both are massive diarrhea, and you just die of that.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's a shitty way to go.
Yeah, and this game says, the directions say this game is for 12 and up. 2 to 6 players, ages 12 and up. We played this with a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they both were able to play this game. Now, the 4-year-old couldn't read the cards. We had to read it to him. But just matching the trail pieces, having the trail cards in your hand, you have a hand of 5. Once those are gone, you just draw one at a time, which is part of the thing that doesn't drag the game on, but forces you to really decide what you're going to do and slows down the trail process. But the 4-year-old was able to match the cards up to see, oh, this card plays here, this card plays here, and was able to work that out really well. So he had no problems and actually enjoyed playing it. We played it twice. Both times together, combined together within an hour. So in less than an hour, we played the game twice. We died both times. It said you needed to get through 10 sets of 5 for the trail cards. We got through 8 on the first time and 6 on the second time. And the first time we were able to get through so much because we died one at a time. We got picked off one thing after another. Conley, my youngest one, died from a snake bite. I died from cholera. Reese died from dysentery, and Amber was the last one to die. She died from a snake bite as well. So that was slowly getting picked off. But the challenging part of the game is that you get to choose between helping a trail mate or playing a trail card to move a little farther down the road. So you get to this point where you don't have any trail cards in your hand. About halfway through the game, you are out of trail cards in your hand. So your turn can either be to draw another trail card or to help a friend with a supply card. So and if you draw a card, you're done. You can't do anything else. If you play a supply card, you can't do anything else. So it really causes that feeling of dragging the game out longer. Like the game could go by really quick if you could play 2 cards at one time, but you can't. So it drags, it makes that trail longer. It makes that Oregon Trail, you get through half of it just fine. And then you start going, oh man, we are never going to get to the end of this. It is taking forever to get through it. And I think that's the point of the game. That's the idea of it. This game is really well done. I recommend it. The only place you can get it is Target. So, and I don't know if you can get it from the store or if you can only order it online. We ordered it online, so I recommend going and checking it out.
All right.
And this will be coming to our next gaming day at your house.
Cool. I look forward to playing it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Lots of fun. So the other thing that we did this weekend, and before we get into Suicide Squad, my wife and I actually watched a movie. And we didn't go out to the theaters. This was a movie that was on Netflix. And believe it or not, it came out in 2016. Have you ever heard of a movie called Hush?
I don't know. I just can't remember.
I never heard of it. Apparently, it came out in the theaters, but it obviously didn't last very long or didn't get a whole lot of play because I'd never heard of it. It stars Kate Siegel, who isn't known for really anything.
Not to be confused with Katie Seagal.
Right.
Completely different person.
Exactly. and that's who I thought maybe that was the same person when I saw the name pop up on the Netflix thing, but then I saw the actress and I'm like, nah, that's not her. Um, so I was really like, um, I don't know. We were watching this movie. It's an interesting premise. The main character is a deaf mute who is a novelist and uh, basically lives out on her own out in the wilderness, and a killer kills her neighbor who runs to her house and is banging on the door trying to get her to let her in, but she's washing dishes and can't hear her because she's deaf. So, um, so the killer basically stabs this lady right in front of her or right behind her, and she doesn't know it. And the killer gets this idea of, oh, she's deaf, I'm going to toy with her. And so it's a cat and mouse type thing. But as we get in, you start out and you're like, oh, this might actually be pretty good. No, it goes downhill from there. You get your classic horror thriller stupid tropes, like she tries to run for it against a guy who's bigger, stronger, faster than her. She tries to she's supposed to be a smart person. She writes novels. She comes across as intelligent in the early ons, the first half of the movie, but when it gets into the point of fight or flight, she becomes an idiot. She's just moronic. Her choices are dumb. She tries to climb out on a metal roof to get away from him, and he has a crossbow. So he shoots her in the ass with an arrow. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? You're on a metal roof. I don't know, maybe being deaf means that she doesn't know that things make sound. Maybe they could play that. I've never been deaf, so maybe that's a possibility. So, I don't know, maybe there's a deaf person listening to this. How about
that? You're going to hell for that one.
Yeah, probably. Sorry. But it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And she has, at the beginning of the movie, she's like trying to cook a rack of lamb or lamb chops or something like that. And they catch fire, or like they start smoking in the oven while she's talking to a neighbor. And the smoke alarm goes off, which is so loud that the neighbor, who can hear, is just like covering her ears in like almost like fetal position. It's so loud. And Katie's character, I think her name's Maddie, apologizes for it. She's like, it has to be that loud so that I can feel the vibrations of it. So at the beginning of the movie, this character sees what this smoke alarm does to a person who can hear. It's not until the very end of the movie that she actually uses that against her attacker.
Well, she doesn't have Marine training or anything like that. So, and what kind of, does it say what kind of books she writes?
No, they almost sound like, they're almost like, they almost kind of sound like maybe even romance novel type books, or, it's hard to tell. Like, you don't actually get to hear what she's written, other than she's trying to come up with an ending of one of her books. And that's how she's actually like on her Mac, and the killer has snuck into the house and stole her cell phone and is taking pictures of her, and they're popping up on her screen on like on the, what is it, the iDrive or whatever that they share, that iPhones and Macs share pictures. So like if somebody takes a picture with your, or you take a picture with phone, it saves it to your hard drive or whatever, syncs them together.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't have an iPhone.
I have an iPhone, but I don't have a Mac.
Yeah, so like the pictures start popping up of her, somebody behind her basically taking these pictures, and she's like, and so she starts freaking out. like it so you don't really know what kind of book she writes, but it's not marine training that she needs, it's just common sense, and she doesn't have common sense. And I know that's a horror thriller, like that's the problem with those movies, but it just solidifies the fact that I hate those movies and I don't think they're any good. So
Well, the only reason I asked about what kind of book she writes, because if she perhaps writes Dick and Jane books or something like that, then maybe she's not the brightest bulb on the tree. But I don't know. I was just guessing.
I don't know, and I wish I had a good answer for you, but it's just bad. Don't go watch the movie. It's on Netflix, so avoid it if you can. So, yeah, now we got to get into the creme de la creme of this whole podcast. So, you went and saw Suicide Squad over the weekend. You went and saw it twice.
As a matter of fact, I did. I did see it twice.
You liked it so good that you went and saw it a second time.
Yep.
In the same weekend.
In the same weekend. So I'm just going to go out and just say it right off the bat. I freaking loved that movie. We'll just get that out of the way.
Okay.
My wife loved the movie. I loved the movie. We will probably buy the Blu-ray when it comes out around Christmas time or whenever it comes out. So there, now that's out of the way. So what do you want to know?
Well, so I want to start off with, what was your favorite part about the movie? What made this movie good for you?
That is a question that we kicked around both times after watching the film. And for me, I think, okay, so I'll admit it. I wanted to see the movie because the Harley Quinn that was created by Margot Robbie just looked freaking awesome.
Right.
Almost the female version of Deadpool kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's hot and all that, but that's not why I wanted to see it.
Harley Quinn is always a fabulous character. I've loved Harley Quinn.
And that's really why I wanted to see this movie, because I thought, they focus on her, let her just do her crazy. This movie's going to be great. With all that said, this movie does not work without Will Smith at all. And my favorite thing about the movie was that he's Deadshot. He's an assassin. He's divorced. He has this little girl that is his world.
Right. And
through the entire movie, the theme is his daughter loves him no matter what he is. And in one part of the movie, he said, he does say, he would like for his daughter to realize that her dad is not a big piece of shit. And with that said, my favorite part is the fact that he gradually becomes a good guy. He gets caught up. They're with a military team. He kind of gets caught up in doing the right thing. He gets to kill people, which he loves to do, but he gets to do it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the transformation of him going, I make a couple of different decisions in my life, and I could be these guys instead.
Right.
And you feel that emanating off the guy. So there's not one scene I particularly will like over others. It's that whole progression of Deadshot throughout the movie.
Okay.
And there's a pivotal scene with him where he has to take a shot that he does not want to take, and he has to make this decision. And he makes the right decision, and it's from that moment on you could tell he's all in. He's wanting to do what they're set out to do. He wants to finish the mission. He wants to prove to his daughter that truly he's not this big piece of shit. So that's my favorite part. long story short, progression of Deadpool was my favorite part of the movie.
Oh, and that's good. I mean, that's kind of what you need within a movie like this. So I got a bunch of questions here for you. So we'll kind of throw these out there, and if they steer us in a different direction, or bring up other questions, we'll kind of go through there. But first of all, is it better than Batman vs Superman?
I think as a overall movie, it's superior to Batman versus Superman.
Better than Civil War? Because I know you thought Civil War was good, but it wasn't like well, I guess where would you take this movie if this movie was part of the Marvel universe? Where would this fit within the Marvel pantheon?
I think,
which I'm railroading you with this one because that wasn't in my list of questions.
Yeah, I know. Now I have to think. Now I actually have to think. Okay, let's start off with the first part of the question. How do I feel it compared to Civil War? I liked Civil War. I liked Suicide Squad. To me, I enjoyed them equally.
That's fair. I mean, they're two completely different movies, so it's kind of hard to compare the two of them. But that was kind of what I was looking for. Did you like one more than the other? Because I guess maybe the better question is Suicide Squad the best Warner Brothers DC movie that has come out in the recent future? The recent future, the recent past.
It is better than the third Batman movie.
Yeah.
It's better than Batman versus Superman. It's not as good. It's not as good as the Batman with Heath Ledger as Joker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't even pretend that it would be, but it's probably as good as the very first Christian Bale Batman. Okay. In my opinion. I enjoyed it that much.
And that's good. I mean, that's kind of what they needed. Like, they needed a movie like that to kind of reset some stuff because they've had such hard times. And that's why we're talking about this movie for two reasons. One, I have heard now, like, with Kip and his wife both really enjoying it. Our friends over at the Daydream Instruction Manual had a podcast about reviewing this movie, and all of them liked it. And I think they had 5 people on that panel, or on that show. So there's 5 more people that liked it. The reviews from the audience are actually really high. The audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes is 75%. That's really high for a movie. So especially for one that the critics just railed on so hard. And so that's kind of why we're talking about this, because I haven't seen the movie, and after reading the reviews, I didn't want to see the movie. But now after listening to people talk about it, I kind of want to see, is it really the dumpster fire that all the critics think it is? Or could this movie be the cult classic that the critics just aren't going to get? So, you kind of gave me the sense of the story. You said that it's better than Batman vs Superman, and it actually ranks fairly high up there. If you put it up there with Batman Begins, I mean that's one of my favorite DC movies. So, did you feel like the characters did they have motivation to actually complete this? And I say this let me kind of explain the backstory to this question. In the comic books, the Suicide Squad is put together from criminals who want to be criminals. These are the bad, the baddest of the bad. These were criminals that could not be reformed, so they needed to put basically a device in their head that if they went wrong, Amanda Waller could hit a button and explode their head, and that actually happens in the comic books on panel.
To whom?
Nobody from this group, because nobody in this group is actually part of the Suicide Squad, except I think maybe, what is it, Rick Flag? I think might have been in the original Suicide Squad, but none of these characters are Suicide Squad characters from the comic books. These are all characters they just did for the movies for, in my opinion, for one reason, and that's because they've been in other things and were popular. Deadshot was popular in the Arrow. Harley Quinn is popular because of the Joker, which is why the Joker's in this movie, is to get people in it. That's why Batman's in this movie, is to get people to come see it, because these characters are not characters that are going to cause anyone else to come watch this. I mean, these are C and D list characters, including Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is not an A-list villain by any means. She's the sidekick to the Joker for most of her comic book history. But so do they have this kind of, do the characters feel like if they don't do what they're supposed to do, if they don't complete the mission, that they're going to die?
Absolutely. They're injected in the neck with something the size of a rice grain that will blow their heads off. They're told this.
I heard it actually happens.
It does actually happen. I won't tell you to whom. That's why I asked you about the comic book.
Yeah.
But there is occasion, especially when they first start their mission, where they had to go against their natural instincts, because Deadshot's like, if he dies, we die, so they had to protect Rick Flag, or, you know, we got to do this or we're dead kind of a thing. And so, yes, their motivation is definitely just staying alive.
So, okay, now, and because I listened to other podcasts and read all other reviews on this movie, I know who this character is, and we'll try to keep this as spoiler free as possible, but there's a chance that some stuff could come out. So if you're really interested in not knowing about this movie, then maybe you should go watch the movie and then come back and listen. But we'll try to keep this as spoiler free as possible. So I know that the character that is killed in this fashion does not have as big of a backstory, or the backstory isn't explained to this character at very little, if at all, compared to the other characters. As a viewer, did you feel like that detracted from the story? Did you feel like, well, you know, why would they have this, you know, where's the, did the death of that character to you just feel like it was a death of a character because it had to happen, and not that it had the same meaning that it should have?
Okay, so the character gets one sentence backstory. So right off the bat, you realize this is a throwaway character.
Right.
So when that character gets its head blown off, you're not overly surprised. In fact, you realize it's necessary,
right,
to keep the motivation alive, because before that, there were people on the team that thought it's bullshit. They really can't do this.
Right.
It's just, you know, to make us do what they want us to do. They really can't blow our heads off. And then they find out, oh, they can. I guess we better step in line.
So it was kind of, you know, I know it was necessary, and that's kind of the important part. I was glad to see that I was glad to hear that did happen, because that is important. That's the central part of the Suicide Squad. That is very integral to the comic book Suicide Squad. So the other characters' backstories, the fact that they start, you know, you start finding a little bit more about each one of them. Do you feel like that pulled you out of the movie every time they did a backstory, or did those backstories kind of fit in and help progress the story along, or progress that character along? Because, you know, usually you have character progression where it happens within the movie. This movie almost made it made it sound like the character progression happens more from their backstory, you learning about their backstory, and less about what they're doing within the movie, within the mission or the story that the movie's trying to tell you itself. Does that make sense?
It does, and there were the beginning of the movie. There's some backstory. For all intents and purposes, a trading card version of a backstory for everybody, except for the disposable guy and Katana. They don't get their due at the beginning,
right?
As the movie progresses, Will Smith, our Deadshot, gets more of his backstory told. Harley Quinn gets more of her backstory told. Everybody else, no, they do not. But you didn't go watch the movie for those characters,
right?
And so I was fine with that. And
well,
honestly, I didn't feel like it distracted. I mean, when they did Harley Quinn's backstory, she was looking over the railing, and it reminded her of this scene between her and the Joker, so they flash back to that. It totally worked. I was good with it.
Okay, good. Well, because, you hear about this, this movie was in production for quite a while. And while it was in production, you had movies like Deadpool come out and be a huge success. You had Batman v Superman come out and be a huge flop. And I say huge flop in the sense that the fans didn't like it. The critics didn't like it. That one did not succeed on either front. And Deadpool succeeded on both fronts. And every time those movies happened and the fan backlash from those or the fan praise from those movies happened, you heard that, Suicide Squad is going back to reshoot some scenes, which brings up the question, at any point in the movie, did you feel like you could kind of tell? There was a movie, Fantastic Four. You went and saw the latest Fantastic Four, and you said you could feel right where they chopped and added on to the movie. The tone shifted, the movie shifted. It felt like you were watching. It was a really good movie, and then all of a sudden they threw this different ending on that you're like, this just doesn't work. At any point in this movie, did you feel like you could kind of tell where they inserted something that was trying to feed off of other movies or push it farther away from other movies?
Watching the movie, no, I couldn't tell. Thinking about it makes me wonder if that's why we didn't get backstories on the other characters. Maybe those were cut out to make room for these extra shots. I don't know. Oh, and yeah. I was also wrong. Diablo got a good backstory montage. Not really montage, but a flashback.
Right.
So those three, you're good on their backstory. The other characters, like I said, you get a trading card version of it. So
yeah. Well, and I mean, there is also 6 characters. 6 characters in the Suicide Squad, 7 if you count the guy who didn't make it very long. So you have that you've got to try to do a backstory for in a what is the movie, hour and a half, 2 hours?
It's about 2 hours.
2 hour long movie. You're not going to be able to get a good, an extended backstory into all those characters. That's just not enough time. You're going to end up with a 4-hour movie. And I'm not sure any superhero movie should go for 4 hours. I'm not sure any movie should go for 4 hours.
No, and they did do a backstory on the main villain. Kind of sort of covered what you needed to know, but that was about it. But as far as extras, the scenes they went back and shot, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell you what they were. Nothing changed as far as look and feel. So I'm not 100% sure where those were.
Good. Well, and that's the way it should be. That's the way you would hope for. was the plot for this movie, was it as predictable as you would think? You know, is it a very cut and dry, oh, these guys they're going on a suicide mission, they're going out there, they have their change of heart moment, or they realize they've been lied to and now they need to either choose between going the good path or going the bad path, and they all choose to go the good path and win the day and go walk out happy? Is it that cut and dry predictable, or are there some good subtle twists and turns in there to keep you interested and keep the plot threads carrying throughout the movie?
The story on the outside looking in may seem like it's disjointed, but it's not. Basically, it's a movie about criminals being forced to be good guys. They're given a mission. They're forced to carry it out. They do not like what the mission turned out to be, and it's a total slap in their face. I'm not going to give it away, but the objective of the mission is a total kick to the crotch of all of those, of the entire Suicide Squad. That little twist worked perfectly for me. It just goes to show you that they had to do something against their will. It totally sucked when they found out what the objective was. You know, they had their moment where they're like, we're fucking done, you know. Sorry I cussed, but
You're fine.
We're done. And they have their moment with Rick Flag where, you know, even his own men walked out on him when once the stuff really started to come to light. And it just became that moment where, like I said, Deadshot. Is that right? Deadshot?
Yeah.
Yeah. He wanted to be a good guy already at that point. So at that moment, he made the decision, we're going to complete this mission. We don't have to, but we're going to. Harley Quinn, being Harley Quinn, was like, okay, I'm in. I've got nothing else to do. And then she called the other people pussies, and then they kind of did it out of, kind of proved their manhood kind of thing. And, if it's Dirty Dozen or whatever kind of movie you want to compare it to, that's what this was. The story did not have to go and break new ground and all this other stuff. It was a movie about people are forced to go against their true nature to do something for the greater good. And I don't think it mattered who the bad person was that they had to beat. Just getting them there was the whole idea of the movie, in my opinion. And so, yes, the story makes sense because it wasn't about saving the day. It was about bad guys coming to grips with all of a sudden being on the other side. And I thought the actors played that really well.
Cool. Very cool. So I got my last question for you. I have heard from multiple cases that the Joker is in this for a very, very short period of time. Something like 10 minutes, if that. I've also heard multiple reviews say that the Joker's part in the movie is pointless and worthless and didn't even need to be there. Your thoughts on the Joker and Jared Leto as Jared Leto as the Joker, and two, did the Joker really need to be in this movie? Or could it have just been done with mentions and maybe a snippet in a cameo type thing? Did it really needed to be because this movie was billed as Jared Leto as the Joker in this movie, the same way Heath Ledger was billed as the Joker in Batman in The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight was about the Joker. This movie did not seem to be about the Joker.
The movie was not about the Joker at all. He was there for Harley Quinn's backstory, but he cast a shadow throughout the entire second and third act of the movie. You knew he was making an appearance. You didn't know when. You didn't know what he was going to mess up. But he like I said, his shadow was cast, and he played a big part of the movie without even being on the screen. As far as Jared Leto's version of the Joker, not my favorite, but not horrible. You know, it's hard to live up with what Heath Ledger did.
Yeah.
He took this in a completely different direction. He made him a gangster again instead of just a psychopath who wants to watch the world burn. Did you ever watch Justified?
No, I have not seen Justified.
Okay, the bad guy, we'll call him in Justified, is played by a man named Walter Goggins. And there were times where the Joker came off as Walter Goggins' character in Justified. Talked funny, carried a big gun, was scary as hell when he wanted to be. And other than I hated the silver teeth. I hated that.
Yeah.
But who cares? I mean, his laugh, if they ever did a Joker movie around him, that laugh would probably keep you up at night. It was well done. The love story between him and Harley Quinn was real. You felt it. It wasn't just Harley Quinn obsessing over the Joker. It was a two-way street. They were both madly in love with each other, and it played out in the entire movie, and it did move some of the story into certain directions because of it. So, yeah, the Joker needed to be there. He didn't have to be on screen more than 10 minutes because just the idea of him being there and his shadow cast on the movie was enough.
So I want to go back to something that you had said. You had said that his shadow, that the thought and the fear or the shadow that the Joker cast over the second and third act was very influential in the movie. Would it have been better if the Joker would have never shown up, and that shadow, it was treated like almost like a Hitchcock movies? He was known for letting the viewer's imagination take them to wherever they wanted to take them, and that's always worse than what they can show on screen. Would it have worked out better, or maybe could it have been better if they would have just not cast? They could have said Jared Leto was the Joker and just not have him show up. That have this, just the shadow and the fear that comes with him showing up, be there, and let that carry throughout. Could that have actually worked?
No, he needed to be there. He showed up at crucial times. Like I said, a pivotal scene for the Suicide Squad involved him.
Okay.
So he did need to be there. And I hate to do this to you, but I got to run real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay. So we'll talk just a couple minutes here while Kip is running real quick. He's probably got to run a marathon. We've already gone over time a little bit, but I'm curious on how this is all going to work out. And I want to talk a little bit about an article that was written by Major Spoilers and Steven Schleicher over at Major Spoilers. First of all, I love this website. And if you don't go check out majorspoilers.com, if you haven't, I recommend checking it out. He does a nice little article, and I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, in the description for the YouTube channel. And Kip will make sure that it gets into the notes or the description for the podcast page too. So go check this out. He goes and takes and compares the critics' responses for Suicide Squad to the Dirty Dozen from 1967, the classic Dirty Dozen, with Lee Marvin. And he actually goes through and takes snippets from reviews from from 1967 and kind of puts them through there. And he makes the comment that if you take out the references to the military and World War II in those reviews, they sound very similar to what the reviews are to Suicide Squad. The critic reviews, not the audience reviews, but the critic reviews. So it's kind of brings up an interesting thought that maybe the reason that Suicide Squad isn't getting the critic praise, or that critics are bashing on it so much, is because this movie and what's being done, what the director has done with it, is taking this in a completely different direction than what typical superhero movies have been going in. Much like The Dirty Dozen back when it was originally done. So, it's a very interesting article. I recommend going and reading it. I don't have a film background, and neither does Kip. We just enjoy watching these movies. But Steven Schleicher does have a film background. He has taught college level film classes. So he is very well versed in this kind of information. And so I recommend going and checking it out. It's a really good article, and it kind of just shows something else that he brings up in here is the dystopian future, or the dystopian films that are coming out, and that there's been a steady rise of these movies. And this is another one of those movies that fits into those categories, and we've slowly seen them increase. And it's almost like, so are we going to look back at this movie 10 years down the road, and how are we going to see this movie? Are we going to see this movie as will critics see this movie as just the same way they see it now, or will this movie kind of fit into the same way that The Dirty Dozen has, where it's The Dirty Dozen's praised now. You look back at the original Dirty Dozen, and that's considered a classic. Not saying the Suicide Squad should be a classic, but it's possible that it could be looked at that way. So, and Kip is back. So how are you doing, Kip?
I thought I was dying of dysentery there for a second, but
yeah, you don't want to do that.
I do not. Okay, so I did want to point out one thing about the movie. The Enchantress.
Yes.
I thought when the actress was the Enchantress as the kind of blacked out, that had this black smoke circling her, when she was in that character, she was awesome.
Yeah.
When she was Dr. June Moon, or this other incarnation of Enchantress, I thought she fell flat. But really, I just didn't care a whole heck of a lot. Like I said, it was not about
what?
It wasn't about the bad guy that they had to beat. It was about them going against type.
Right. It's more of a personal improvement movie rather than a bad guy movie, and that's what makes it completely different from a superhero movie. This is not a superhero movie in the same sense that it's not. Well, one, it doesn't have superheroes in it. None of these people are superheroes, but they all go on the hero's journey in this movie. So, I just got done saying how I don't have a film background, but I don't have a film background, but I know at least enough about film to know what the hero's journey is. That's your hero, starts out as a nobody, ends up having to make a choice between good and evil, and chooses to be a hero, deals with adversity, becomes hero at the end. Fa la 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 la. Star Wars, is your perfect example of it. Luke Skywalker that's your hero's journey between those original movies, not the prequels.
What
But
prequels? I have no idea what you're talking about.
exactly, exactly. So, you know, I think I can't say that this movie is a bad movie. I was ready to come in and bash this movie as a terrible movie based off of what the critics were saying. But listening to more people talk about it, the more I say that it's not a terrible movie. It's not a dumpster fire. It's just not the movie that they thought it was going to be. And honestly, looking at it, that's if what the critics thought the movie was going to be, the critics had no idea what they were doing, because this movie, from everything that I've read and everything that I hear from people talk about, this movie is exactly what I thought it was going to be. Um, it all fits in line with what I anticipated. So this goes to a bigger problem for people out there that are going to use critic reviews to decide whether or not they want to go see a movie. Um, Critics don't know what a good movie is. I mean, they don't. They know what is a good movie for them, but you also have to remember, most critics are they're ones that think movies like Monster Ball are amazing, and I thought that movie sucked. It's just not my kind of movie. So each critic's going to have their own little part to it. So you have to kind of remember to read their reviews, or I guess each of their reviews are not, they are still opinionated parts of the movie. It's their opinion of the movie. And I'm interested to see Suicide Squad and see where this goes from here and keep looking at it. I mean, like I said before, Suicide Squad, the user ratings on Rotten Tomato, there's over 89,000 user ratings, and it's getting a 3.8 out of 5. That's 72% have liked this movie versus the 261 critics that have reviewed this movie, and it got a 4.7 out of 10. So, which is a 26%. 194 of the 261 people thought it was a terrible movie. So, take it for what it is. It's Suicide Squad. This wasn't supposed to be an amazing. This wasn't a Superman movie. This is never supposed to be a Superman movie. This is supposed to be a dark and brooding. I mean, it's the Suicide Squad, for God's sakes. You have villains as your heroes. What more did you expect?
It's not Gone with the Wind, and it's got its warts. You could pick this movie apart if you wanted to, but I could pick Marvel movies apart too if I wanted to.
Yeah.
This movie does exactly what it's supposed to do. It entertains you, and I don't feel like there was a throwaway scene in the movie. I don't feel like there was something that was wasted or just thrown in there to be thrown in there. I liked everybody in the movie except for really the Enchantress, but you weren't supposed to like her.
Right.
The guy who played Rick Flag, freaking awesome. I really thought this guy was charismatic. He played a military jarhead, following orders guy really well. Plus, he had the voice to die for when you're talking about playing a military guy. So
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about it. If you dove deep into this movie, you could rip it to shreds if you wanted to, but you don't need to. It's called The Suicide Squad. It's based on a comic book. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not, but man, is it entertaining.
Well, and it obviously did really good in the box offices, because it got $133 million. So, just actually almost $134 million. So it's done really good in the box office. So, hey, take it for what it's worth. If you don't like that, go see Sausage Party. That comes out this week. That looks awful, by the way.
It does.
Do not take your kids to see Sausage Party just because it's an animated movie. I had somebody on my Facebook feed put on there that they were shocked that this movie was for kids, and it's like, no, this movie is not for kids. This is an adult's movie that just happens to be animated. Get your head on straight and look at what you're watching before you go let your kids go see this movie. Like, oh jeez, please watch the trailer for Sausage Party before you take your kids to go see that movie.
Just look at the way the bun is animated. That tells you everything you need to know.
And then just don't take your kids to see that movie, for God's sakes. All right. We got to put an end to it here. We've already gone long. I told everybody that we're going to put the link to the Major Spoilers article in the show notes or in the description for this on the podcast, and I'll make sure it gets in there for the YouTube channel. Everybody go check out our blog, geekvice.blogspot.com. You can follow us on Google Plus and on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/geekvice. You can follow us. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Easiest way to get there is tiny.cc/geekvice. If you want to go search in YouTube for us, search for Kip Morph. It's because it's tied to the Google Plus page, and they won't let you put Geek Vice as the name. So go look for Kip Morph. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Geek Vice. You can follow that man over there at Kip Killigan. And last but not least, you can email us at geekvice@gmail.com. Send us an email about what you think about this movie, because I really need some more people telling me what they think of this movie. I am really curious to see what this ends up being and how much this varies between the critics' reviews and the audience reviews. So I'm loving this. It's entertainment. This is more entertaining to me than watching the movies. So I'm liking it. It's got a lot of discussion for it, and it's always good for DC movies to have this kind of discussion amongst the fans, because that is what's going to help the DCU survive, because otherwise it's going to fail miserably and be down the drain. We won't get any more of those movies. So that's all I got. You got anything else there, Kip?
Absolutely not. Just be careful of dysentery.
Yeah, watch out for dysentery. We'll see you guys next week.
It does.